We have a wetlands preserve, which was what the property was before we purchased it. So we had to agree to preserve a portion of it, and that took no arm twisting whatsoever. It was something we're totally in favor of. So eventually we're going to build a walking path through there so people can do a self-guided tour of the wetlands, and we hired a Wetlands Architect to help us replace invasive species with plant native species in here.
Even better.
And then down here is kind of the sort of the main talking point of Area 2, a coolship. So it's facing the wetlands, which will, we theorize, be a rich source of microflora. To spontaneously ferment the beers or the worts that we send out to the coolship.
And now explain what a coolship is now.
A coolship is a very large shallow pan, which is a traditional way of cooling wort. So I mentioned earlier Two Roads, where we boil the malt extract combined with hops. It's called wort. That's pre-fermentation, so there's no alcohol in wort. It's a mix of malt sugars and hops. So the wort gets pumped out to the coolship, and just sitting in that environment cools the wort down to a temperature where it can start to ferment. In most cases we add yeast to the wort in a controlled fermentation, but with a coolship we leave the wort in this shallow pan. The room is surrounded by open windows, so that allows free flow of airborne microbes from the environment to get into the coolship and start to ferment the wort in a process called spontaneous fermentation. So it's a somewhat risky endeavor, but whether it produces a beer that is pleasing to the palate or not, it is an expression of the specific area where we are, to the terroir of this particular place on Earth, facing our wetlands across the way, which happens to also be where the MetroNorth train runs between New York and DC, or Boston and DC. So it's one of the busiest rail corridors in the Northeast that runs right behind our wetlands. So it's a mixed bag of, well, here comes the train now, as a matter of fact. So. Train comes by, I don't know how many times a day, but it's back and forth all the time.
It's an interesting paradox, the two of them together.
Yes, a juxtaposition of sorts that's notable. But the interesting thing is, when the train goes by, I've seen our barrels move a little bit like that. So it is part of our terroir, like it or not. And I think it's actually contributing something.